Welcome back. My name is Faris, aka the Football Accountant, and today we are continuing the series on winning the World Cup. So we've started with 2022 Argentina and 2018 France, and we're now on to 2014 Germany. Now, this is the year I graduated high school, right? So it makes me feel very, very old, and I feel like I've achieved UNC status. So I need to do some catch up on this giveaway, but also admit that I made a mistake. So I didn't realize what I said in the video. I said the first 50 people to subscribe and send me the screenshot will get some swag, but what I meant is that they'll go into a giveaway, right? So I made a mistake. And I didn't realize it until my dad and class teacher here pointed it out. So I'll own the mistake, and only 2 people have sent it to me so far. So I'll give you guys some free swag anyway. All right, we're in the same group chat, so you know who you are. Everyone else, if you still want to do it up until that first 50, you will go into a giveaway. So again, I want it to feel like a team talk, and I make mistakes, and the whole thing for me is owning it, learn from it if you can and move on. So maybe I should get someone to watch my videos before I post them, but I'm in a rush this week. Okay, so I have unfortunately made another mistake, which makes this the darkest day in this channel's very short history. I hope that you, the fans, and the board allow me to keep running this channel, and I promise to improve and, more importantly, learn from my mistakes. So I said that in the France video, I said that if you got 2 wins and 6 points, there couldn't be 2 other teams that also got 6 points, which isn't true, right? You could have 3 teams all beat the really bad team, and then depending what country you're from, they would either play rock, paper, scissors, or scissors, paper, rock, and beat one of the other teams in a circle. So team A beats B, B beats team C, and C beats team A. So those 3 teams would get 6 points, and the bottom team would get 0, right? Now, the last time this happened where 3 teams got 6 points was 1994, okay? And it was a 24-team World Cup, which meant the few best third-place teams also qualified, okay? So the part where I said 3 teams can't get 6 points isn't true, but I said that guaranteed them qualification, so they should rotate, right? Which is true in a way, okay? But I kept going back through the World Cups, and then I got to 2 things in 1982. The first one is just random trivia that they used groups 1 to 6 rather than A to F, which feels weird to us that have only known lettered groups in the Champions League or World Cup, whatever it is, right? So no team, or every team that's got 6 points has qualified for the knockout rounds, okay? The next part of it, again, when I got back to 1982, the more interesting part is Algeria didn't qualify with 2 wins, okay? So you're probably thinking, wait, but you just said every team that got 6 points has qualified. This was when 2 wins was only worth 4 points, or 2 points per win, right? Simpler way to put it, 2 points per win. So 1982 is the last time that a team got 2 wins and 1 loss and didn't go through, okay? In that 1994 World Cup, the third best teams, or a few of them, did go through. In 1982, where Algeria finished third with 2 wins, that wasn't the case, okay? So they didn't go through, right? And again, I figured out some of that when I was editing the France video, but I would rather, because of the vibe I want this to have, and I'm happy being human and making mistakes, and the main thing for me is just to learn from them. I kept it in, and I was like, I'll just address it the next video, okay? Now, when we come to France, the results needed for that to occur couldn't have by the final game, which is the important part, right? Because for the 3 good teams to all beat the bad team, only 2 of them can have done it in the first 2 games. And even though you might expect that team to do it by the 3rd game, it didn't happen, right? Or couldn't happen. So a simpler way to put it, after the first 2 games, France were on 6 points, right? Australia were on 1 point and Denmark were on 4 points. So 3 teams could not get 6 points by the final game because of the results in the first 2 rounds. Now, France still chose to rotate pretty heavily. They made 6 changes in that final group game against Denmark, which for me is the most interesting part of this whole thing, because they were willing to accept the fact that Denmark could have got 7 points to their 6 points, right? And they would have finished second. Now, common wisdom or logic says you need to finish first in your group so that you get an easier team. You go and play a second place team, or this World Cup, you might even play a third place team from another group in the round of 32 or here round of 16. Now, France were willing to take the gamble on rotating a good amount to finish second possibly and go and play a harder team in the round of 16. Now, in some ways that makes sense because your players get rest and then you go into that game and you're able to bring back all your starters in, which he did, and they're more well rested. However, I think, again, what I've done in coaching, and like I said, logic and wisdom have dictated it, you want to play an easier team in the round of 32 or round of 16, whatever the first knockout game is, so that you can then, again, maybe rest or have an easier game, get that extra win and go around further. But in a way, you're kind of just putting off the inevitable. It's like I could go all out, win my group barely, versus a bad team in the round of 32 at this World Cup. And then as soon as I get to an actual good team in the round of 16, I just lose. Right now, if you're there to get as far as possible, okay, that is a good thing to do. But if you're there to win it, I think you have to do what France does, which is not only good from a mentality point of view, because you're saying to your players, we can go out there and beat anyone. But as we've seen already from the minutes, the whole thing of World Cups is you don't rotate as much as possible, especially in the knockouts. Now, because they've qualified, he can afford to do it here. But he knows as soon as I get to the knockouts, even if I did finish first and I go and play an easier second place team, I'm not going to rotate in the knockouts. I'm going to play my best team, right? And the trade-off between having a slightly easier game in the knockouts when you're not able to rotate, but you might just have to run a little bit less, right, towards the end of the game. But again, the margins are so fine that I don't think you can necessarily say we're 2-0 up in a World Cup round of 32. All of a sudden we're going to stop running or we're going to play keep ball, because they could get a goal and then all of a sudden you're in somewhat jeopardy again. So hopefully that makes sense. And again, not that I'm happy to make mistakes, but I'm happy to own up to them. And I've learned like 3 or 4 new things from making this mistake, which I think is always the end goal for me. Now we come to the lessons from Germany 2014. So again, this slide is the few things that I remember before I've gone and watched the games or done the minutes analysis like we'll get to, or lineups like we'll get to in the next few slides. So 3 main things for me. The first one is they switched to a fixed number 9 in closer. Again, same as France did the tournament after this one. Their main subs were attackers, so the 12th, 13th, and 14th highest minutes getters, if that's the right way to put it, were all attackers. And the last thing is their midfield was very reserved, right? So in a normal 4-3-3, you would have the player roles, they call them, are 6, 8, and 10. And basically you can think of that as how high up you play or how attacking you are. So if we just have the midfield here, you have your number 6 here, very, very rarely gets forward. And then you have your number 8 and your number 10 ahead of him. Now the number 8 sometimes gets forward, but maybe doesn't go all the way up here. And your number 10 very often gets forward and gets beyond the striker, for example, sometimes. So their midfield, even though the traditional makeup of a midfield would be someone who's good at staying here all the time, someone who's good at doing sort of 50-50, and then someone here who's good at attacking or like getting higher up 75% of the time and more playing in the pocket 25%, or coming and dropping deep 25%. Again, rough numbers, don't think about it too much, but the 4 or 5 midfielders that they played were all used to playing this role, right? For their club teams, I would say for the most part, they were number 6s. So again, drawing the parallel to France, but in a different way. France's back four was very reserved and wasn't too adventurous in terms of getting forward and getting up here in line with their winger or beyond the striker, putting crosses in, things like that. Germany decided to have that reserved part of the team in the center, right? They did it through their midfield, which in theory would allow your fullbacks then to be a bit more adventurous, but as we'll see through their lineups, they didn't necessarily do that either, which again is interesting when you think of what makes a good Premier League team, which we've already spoken about a little bit, and what makes a good World Cup team. You can have all of these great players, like, I mean, Germany did, and still the game plan is to keep things tight and not to have 2 or 3 of your midfielders ahead of the ball, or 2 of your midfielders ahead of the ball and 1 of your fullbacks ahead of the ball, because if you get counterattacked, again, that one time is all it takes. You can go home. You can't take the risk of, oh, we're going to push everyone high up, and over the course of the season, pushing this fullback up or pushing this midfielder up is going to get us 10, 15 more goals through their positioning, not just by them, but through their positioning, but it's going to cost us 5 goals. It's like, okay, over the course of a season, you take that 15 goals to 5 conceded is great. It's plus 10. But in the World Cup, you can't wait for things to average out. You have to be more reserved, and you have to play the percentages a lot more than you do in league football or club football. So we should be used to seeing this by now, but again, it's just highest amount of minutes played to lowest amount. The first orange bar is the 11th guy, so you can think of it like starting 11 above that. And then the next orange bar is the 14th guy, so you can think of it like the 3 subs. Now, if we look at their top 7 players, you have 645 minutes as number 7, and you have 3 guys that have played 690. So again, just showing how basically unimportant rotation is when you have 7 players playing all but one half of football in 7 games, right? Another way to look at it is the starting 11 played 86.4% of the minutes, and the next 3 played 10.4% of the minutes, giving you 96.8% of the minutes. So again, when you get your first team and subs, they're going to play almost all of the minutes available, and you're not really looking for on-pitch contribution so much outside of specialist situations, like you might bring on, again, that third centre back, or you might bring on a target man or a penalty taker, things like that. That's what I'm really looking for those, in this case 9, but at this current World Cup, 10 players. Then we come to the minutes distribution. Now, this bell curve, it should sort of tail off a bit here, but unfortunately in the program I am not able to draw that. But just to demonstrate again what I would expect, low minutes down here, and then bulk of the minutes in this sort of section, and tailing off less minutes down there. So you can see a good chunk of it fits the trend line, which I drew from 22 to 32, which based on your position is going to be, again, roughly your peak. I would say 22 is probably the peak for a lot of players in certain ways, not in all ways, but for wingers and fullbacks. And then your 30 to 32, I would say, is more like your centre backs and goalkeeper. Of course, any player, any position can peak at any age, but again, just a rough guide. So majority of the players fall under the trend line. We have 2 up here who you could argue maybe they're peaking a little bit early, or they're just playing very well for their age. And then same up here, we have these 3 players who maybe are playing a little bit more than you might expect. You have closer out there, and then I believe 2 of them are defenders. We come to their results. They scored 18, they conceded 4, keeping 4 clean sheets for a goal difference of plus 14. They also needed extra time against Algeria in the round of 16 and the final against Argentina. Now, 4 goals conceded and 4 clean sheets, you should be thinking same ballpark. 18 goals scored and goal difference of plus 14, you should be thinking, hopefully, a lot higher than the previous 2 teams that we've looked at. So then we look at outliers, right? Them beating Brazil 7-1. I mean, it was due to a lot of reasons. Neymar was injured, Thiago Silva was injured. This was a World Cup on home soil, which I think was added pressure. And Germany had a very, very good plan of targeting the space in behind Marcelo as he bombed forward. So again, I've spoken about how reserved the France backline was, or this German midfield was. And for me, it goes to show that Marcelo obviously is a great player. He's won a lot of Champions Leagues and one of the best attacking left backs, I would say, of all time, or in my lifetime anyway. But you cannot expect that all of his attacking qualities is going to be offset, or it's going to average out. Like, he's going to get you 10 assists a season over the course of a season, just as an example number, and he's going to cost you 5 goals, right? In a league season, that's okay, because plus 5, any tactic that gets you positive goal difference is a good tactic, okay? But in a World Cup, if he bombs forward and all of a sudden 3 of those 5 assists that he's given against him, or 3 of the 5 goals that he's sort of giving away by being so aggressive with his positioning happen in one game, you can't come back from it, which is essentially what happened here. Okay, so if we remove that game and put it into 6 games, all of a sudden they've scored 11 goals in 6 games, right? Very similar ballpark to the other results. And their goal difference is going to be only plus 8 in 6 games, right? Which is, again, like winning every game 1.150, something like that. Same ballpark as everyone else. Now, with outliers, you can't just, throw the number that you don't like out the window, but when it is explainable, and again, this is why context and watching the matches matter, is because this I can explain with context. Okay, Brazil were dealing with, even if you don't agree with me on the home fans or the Marcelo point, but if you watch the highlights, you probably would, on the latter of those two, them losing Neymar and Thiago Silva does automatically make this, from even Germany being slight favorites going into it, now all of a sudden they're overwhelming favorites. Okay, so being able to account for and explain outliers is a very delicate task, I would say, but if you're good at it, all of a sudden you're able to make sense of a lot of things, or maybe why they don't look as uniform as the previous 2 teams that we've looked at. Now we come to their first game. Again, the arrows are changes from this team to the final. So maybe not by the next game, but over the next 7 games, he makes these tweaks, and he finds, again, he was pretty close. Same ballpark as everyone else. He's made 3 changes. So Klose comes in for Goetze, giving them a fixed number 9. Khedira switches for Christoph Kramer, an even more reserved midfielder, I would say. And Schweinsteiger, who was injured, comes in for Mertesacker, but that means Boateng slides in to centre-back. Lahm he was somewhat a holding midfielder under Pep, but his more natural position is right back. He goes there, and Schweinsteiger comes into holding midfield. Then between the first and second game, again, they've won, don't rotate for no reason. They make no changes, but they drew. Now, again, Schweinsteiger comes in, starts playing more. Podolski, one change, I guess, somewhat unexpected change, you could say. Schweinsteiger, I think he was always planning to do. Podolski was him being adaptable and coming up with a plan on the fly. Then we come to their first knockout. Again, only 2 changes. Then we come to the quarterfinal, 3 changes. The most important of those being Klose, who, after coming off the bench a couple of times, now starts the next 3 games. And The only goal that closer gets is in the thrashing of Brazil, where, again, they've made no changes going into the semi-final. So don't rotate if you don't need to, right, is lesson number one. And lesson number two is, again, or just looking at trends, your number 9 does not need to score as many goals as you might think. You need a player to do it, but based on the last 3 teams, it hasn't been the number 9, okay, which I think is interesting. And then we come to the final again, like I said, only one change. Now, the other outlier is, if I go back to it, on the minutes distribution, you have Schürrle here playing 2.8 full 90s, okay? Which that number is a little bit higher than the others. Now, in that final, Christoph Kramer gets injured in the 31st minute, and Andre Schürrle, who is having a very good World Cup with 5 appearances off the bench up till that point, comes on for him and plays a full 90. So again, it's an outlier, I would say, for 2 reasons, because in a normal game, for you to play 90 minutes as a sub, you would have to come on, not including injury time, you would have to come on in the first minute to play 90 minutes. And he was only able to play 90 minutes coming on in the 31st minute because it went to extra time, because it's a World Cup game, right, or a knockout game. So again, being able to use context and explain outliers of why that 2.8 number is a little bit higher. If we take away, again, that one game and 90 minutes, you're looking at 5 sub appearances and roughly 160 minutes, so 32 minutes per time. Okay, so if we just said 6 times, again, 32 minutes, he would only have played about 2 full 90s, which is still a little bit higher than the last 2 guys in the same position as him that we've looked at, but it's not 2.8. The other thing, again, being able to explain all of this through context, is he got 3 goals and 1 assist, okay, in all of his minutes. So he was, I would argue, a lot more impactful or important than the 14th or 16th guy that Argentina and France had. So hopefully that makes sense with all of the numbers I've just thrown at you. Again, this is just something fun I'm doing. The link will also be in the bio this time, so thanks to my sister for that suggestion as well. So it's just the FootMob app. You can either click that or come through to here, the menu, predictor, go to leagues, and then go down to join a league. But I mean, probably the easiest way to do it is just going down and clicking the link in the bio. All right, now this will be my last video before the World Cup actually kicks off. So the word we're going to learn is sorry, plus those 2 mistakes that I made earlier. So again, I've said it before, but the 2 main comments that I want is, you know, how to improve and what you want to learn about, what you want to see me talk about. So this time it's those 2 as well, but I'm, after this series, going to be mostly switching to game analysis throughout the World Cup. So I want to do games that fans, or not really fans, friends and family of mine that watch this channel are going to enjoy. So I'm going to do Australia, obviously England, and then I have friends from Turkey, Bosnia. But if, you know, I haven't mentioned your country, or you have family ties or whatever it is, you want to see me analyze a certain game, or maybe just look at that team, but you don't necessarily mind what game I do, then let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to get to it. So again, the word is sorry. Remember to be ready, safe, and kind. All right, cheers.